Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Adeyemi, and today we are going to talk about one of the most important aspects of writing, that is creating compelling characters for your stories. Whether you are writing a novel, a short story, or a screenplay, your characters are the soul and the heart of your story, and it is very essential to create characters that your readers or viewers will care about. In this video, I am going to be making reference to my latest book titled My Fellowship Crush, and I'll be providing you with some tips and techniques to help you create compelling characters that will keep your audience engaged. And if you want to buy the storybook, I am going to be putting a link in the description below for you. It will lead you directly to where the book is. The story is about a group of undergraduates who have to navigate several emotional connections, schoolwork, and church duties. I am going to try not to give spoilers, so let's drive straight into business. For the first tip, understand your character's motivation. The first step to creating a compelling character is to understand their motivation. What drives your character? What are their goals and their desires? What are their fears and weaknesses? In the book My Fellowship Crush, the main character, whose name is Ifeoluwa Aderounmu, was a young lady who was a very emotional person. She was outspoken, she was outgoing, she loved making friends, and she loved being around the people she loved. Her main motivation was ensuring that all her goals were achieved academically, in church, and also to be able to find true love with that one guy she had her eye on for a while. By understanding your character's motivation, you can create a character that is relatable and realistic. This will help your readers or your viewers, as it may be, to connect with your character on a deeper level. The second tip is to create flaws and weaknesses for your character. See, no one is perfect, and neither should your characters be. By creating flaws and weaknesses in your characters, you make them more human and more relatable. For example, in the story My Fellowship Crush, one of the characters, whose name was Anthony, was a really nice guy, a gentleman to the core, who however had a very strong body odor. This made it more real, and using this technique helps to remind your audience that really nobody is perfect. The flaws and the weaknesses can be physical, it could be emotional, or it could be mental. They might have anger issues. They can be minor or major, but they should affect the character's actions and decisions throughout the story. The next thing to consider is to give your characters a unique voice. Each character should have a unique voice that reflects their personality, their background, and their motivations. This can be done through their dialogue, through their thoughts and actions. It is also very important to make sure that each character sounds different from the others, so that they don't all blend together. In the book My Fellowship Crush, one of the characters, whose name was Oriche Gene, had a personality of being very loud, saying things as they are, and being very, very blunt. So there were points in the story where he was cutting into conversations, he was saying things that shouldn't be said, all in a very playful mood. So this only reflected his character, and this was because he had a unique voice. Also, Anthony was portrayed to be a very, very cool person, and this reflected in the way he spoke to Ife, even when she did things that came off as being very rude to him. By giving each character a unique voice, you will make them more memorable, more interesting, more engaging, and so many more options to your audience. The fourth step is to create character arcs. A character arc is the journey that a character goes through throughout the story. It is very important to create character arcs for your main characters because it makes them more dynamic and more interesting. The character arc should reflect the character's motivation, the flaws and their weaknesses. It should also show how the character changes and grows throughout the story in terms of perceptions, thoughts, principles, and what have you. It should also show how they overcome obstacles to achieve their goals. The next tip is the show, don't tell principle. Finally, it is important to show your character's traits rather than telling the audience about them. Instead of saying that your character is brave, show them doing something brave. Instead of saying that your character is kind, show them actually doing something kind or performing a kind act. By showing your character's traits, you make them more believable and realistic. For example, in the book My Fellowship Crush, there was no point ever where Anthony was said to be a gentleman. However, we already know he's a gentleman by the way he asked after Ife, by the way he noticed the things about her that did not really seem right, and he cared enough to ask about it. Nobody said Orisegene was a loud guy, but we know that Orisegene was a loud guy because the way he said things that were not meant to be said, and the way he cut into conversations, and the way he was very bold about his emotions on the WhatsApp group. If you've read the story, you would understand what I'm saying. Then you would know that he was a very loud person. So the show Don't Tell rule states that you don't need to tell people what you want them to see. You have to show them. Instead of saying that when they entered the apartment, the boy had hung himself on the rope. Instead, you could say when they entered the apartment, the shocking sight of a dangling body from the ceiling caught them unawares. This way, you did not necessarily mention that there was a scenario of somebody hanging himself. You are only trying to show a situation, and anybody reading that story would know that it was a very, very cruel sight. In conclusion, creating compelling characters is essential to any successful story. By following these tips, principles, and techniques, you'll be able to create characters that are relatable, that are interesting, and that are very engaging to your audience. Remember to understand your characters one after the other. Understand their motivations, create their flaws and weaknesses, give your characters a unique voice, create character arcs, and show, don't tell. Thank you very much for watching, and happy writing. Remember to subscribe, leave a comment, like, and share this video to your friends.